What's going on, fantasy football world? We are back. The Shiver Fantasy Football Insight. This is week 4. We're going to run through our starts and our shivers this week. So guys that you may not have in your lineup that we think you should put in your lineup, and vice versa. Some superstars that may underperform this week, give you a cold performance. I'm Brian.
I'm Brad.
Let's dive right in. So I'm going to let Brad, if you want to get started with your quarterbacks that you like this week.
All right. So basically what we're going to do here, we're going to go, we each pick 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. We have a couple tight ends to go over, and that's basically it. So I'm going to start with my quarterbacks. That the one quarterback I've been letting everybody know for the first 3 weeks, this is the week to get him in your lineup. That's Tom Brady. I know he's been a very big disappointment, for the first 3 weeks, and I think this is the week that he gets right. He has Mike Evans coming back. I think Julio Jones is back. You saw what Russell Gage did last week, and he's also playing a Kansas City Chiefs team, so he's going to have to score some points. So I think Brady is probably my quarterback of the week this week. He's going in my lineup, and I think you showed yours too. So that's my start of the week for quarterback, and I guess we'll alternate here. I'll let you go with yours.
So a guy that I am going to say I'm big on this week is going to be Cooper Rush. Now, this is a guy that is available on probably most of your waiver wires, and if you're in a pinch, a quarterback can be a guy that you could plug in and play this week. He's getting a Washington defense that they're just not good. The secondary is just, they're blowing coverages, linebackers covering receivers. It's just no pressure on the front 4. I think that with Cooper Rush, his first 2 games that he's played, he's 47 for 75 for 514 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is pretty good for a backup, let alone even a starter. Those numbers are very acceptable. And on a fantasy football level, those were just some decent defenses in the Bengals and the Giants. He's going to get a worse defense in this matchup. He's going to go for at least 270, 280, I'd say 2 touchdowns. I like Cooper Rush starting this week.
All right, so we'll jump into my second quarterback of the week. Not my play of the week, but if you're in a pinch at quarterback, I think Jared Goff's somebody to look at. So Goff has 7 touchdowns on the year, over 3 games. That's pretty good. He's got 2 interceptions, and 1 came on a Hail Mary at the end of the game, so this doesn't really go against him. He's averaging about 250 yards per game. So he's not doing terrible. I mean, he's not doing nothing great, but let's say your QB1 is Russell Wilson, or maybe even Tua for tonight. So I think Goff is a plug there. I think he can go in and outperform both of those 2, and we're going to talk about Wilson a little bit later. But Goff's my second quarterback that I think, we're obviously trying to stay away from the stars. We're trying to stay away from.
Oh, some of us are.
Yeah, we're trying to stay. I mean, as far as starting goes, we're trying to stay away from Mahomes and Josh Allen, obviously the Hurts and folks like that. So that's why we're talking about Goff right now. But I think he's a good option if you're in quarterback need this week. So that's my second quarterback.
So I was going to cheat and use a superstar for my second quarterback. I'm actually, since we're doing it that way, I'm going to deviate from my plan. I will mention Joe Burrow. He was my original pick, but obviously he is a superstar. I think Joe Burrow goes nuts tonight, gets his game back right. The offensive line should keep him upright. But we're not going to talk about Joe Burrow a ton. I'm going to do a complete U-turn. I'm going to switch back over. I don't know how confident I am saying this. We're just talking matchups. I guess I can say Mariota again. I like Mariota. I think them and the Browns are going to get a little bit more high scoring. I'm just going to say Mariota is a guy that if you still haven't plugged him in your lineup and you need some help, I would say Mariota could give you some. But I would say Joe Burrow still. I like Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, Mariota's not a bad choice. I mean, he does have that rushing ability, the rushing touchdowns, which, he's already done. So he's not a bad choice. So, all right, so we're going to run down the whole start list, and then we're going to run down the whole shiver list.
Let's go ahead and do the shivers on the quarterbacks. How do we keep it all grouped together?
All right, that sounds good too. So my shiver of the week, Russell Wilson. So I mentioned him just a little bit ago. He's playing really bad football. I know he's probably somebody's QB1 out there, and you guys are probably pulling your hair out about it, but I think over time he gets right. I think over time, because that Denver offense they got too many weapons to play like this. I just think it's a matter of time before they break out. So I know he's getting dropped in leagues. I don't think I'd drop him, but I think he's definitely on my bench until I see what happens with him, and hopefully he turns it around. I mean, he's only got 2 touchdowns on the year. 2 touchdowns in 3 games. That's pretty bad. He's averaging about 240 yards a game, which that's not horrible, but he did have 340 yards his first game in week 1. And yeah, and it's week 2 he went lower and lower. Week 3 he went lower and lower and lower. So definitely on the bench. Stash him. Don't drop him yet, because like I said, that Denver offense is just too talented to not perform. So I think it's a matter of time before they do.
Okay, yeah, so I agree about Russell Wilson. My first shiver of the week is going to be Matt Stafford. Now, again, these are not sits. These are just guys we think are going to underperform their projections. I just don't think Matt Stafford has a great matchup this week. The Niners defense knows him pretty well. They've been playing well. And the Niners are favored in this game at home. I see that being a bad recipe for an opposing quarterback, especially a quarterback that hasn't been great this year. Stafford hasn't been bad, he just hasn't been great. I think he has a subpar game here, maybe about 240 and a touchdown with an interception, somewhere in that range. So Matt Stafford for me is going to be a guy that if I have a better option, I'm looking to plug him in.
All right, and my next shiver is going to be Kirk Cousins. So last week was his chance to shine. He did not shine. So he was like my pick last week, where I thought he would do really well. Played a bad defense, and he still did not perform. So he lost my trust. He should probably lose your trust too until he improves his game or whatever. I think Minnesota's got a lot of weapons too, but the Dalvin Cook injury, and they are traveling overseas to play this game also. So I don't really like Cousins in this matchup, and he's on my bench.
Okay, so for my second shiver at the quarterback position, I'm going a little bit on a limb here. I see a perfect storm coming for a bad game. It's going to be Justin Herbert. So Herbert has been overall pretty decent this year, so no indications he's going to just go out there and bust this week. The reason I don't like it is he's going in against the Texas defense that has been sneaky good against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy. Also, when you look at Justin Herbert, he's got the rib injury. I know he played last week. We don't know how significant that injury is. He looks like a tough kid, though, so he could be gutting it out through a lot of pain. I just think that you're putting a lot of things together that are going against a good game. So where there's smoke, there's fire. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards all the indicators being somewhat true, and Justin Herbert having a slightly down game than usual. With him, I'm going to say right around 226. A touchdown and no interception, somewhere in that range. So not a bad game, just not a great game.
All right, so that will wrap up the quarterbacks. So we're going to dive into the running backs. So, all right, my running back is going to be Cordell Patterson. Get him in your lineup. Yeah, I know he was probably like an 11th rounder, 10th rounder, somewhere in that range, and you probably have him maybe in your flex play, maybe on the bench because you have the Dalvin Cooks or the people above him, but he needs to be in your lineup. Whether it's at your flex position or your RB2, I mean, he's averaging over 100 yards a game. He's got 302 yards on the year. He's got 2 touchdowns, 49 carries. I mean, he's getting fed. He plays Cleveland this week, and I think he continues to get fed. So this week, I think Patterson has another big game. I'm going to say he's right in that same range of 120 yards, a touchdown, 2 or 3 receptions in there, and he's at that 20 point range again for you. So
I'm going to go with this. I'm going to put a little disclaimer on this one too, because this is kind of an obvious start, I would think, if you're a DeAndre Swift owner, and that's going to be Jamal Williams. But I'm going to also be on a disclaimer and say if DeAndre Swift manages to play in this game, I'm starting Jamal Williams over DeAndre Swift. There is no questions anymore. Jamal Williams is absolutely dominating his touches when he's getting the chances. Now, Jamal Williams is not an explosive player like DeAndre Swift, so he's never going to fully take that backfield over unless DeAndre Swift is hurt, which We have that this week. I think he's going to be out for the next couple weeks to the end of their bye. So if you're a DeAndre Swift owner, you should have Jamal Williams. It should be an easy plug and play. If you have Jamal Williams and you're not a DeAndre Swift owner, you just gained another running back for the next 2 weeks, maybe even moving forward after that. So Jamal Williams this season alone, last week, for the season he has 4 touchdowns. Last week he went 20 touches for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that's absolutely amazing production. That's borderline RB1 any day of the week. If you can get that kind of production from him this week, not even the 2 touchdowns, just 100 total yards and a touchdown, and you're playing him at your RB2 or your flex spot, you're going to win that matchup. So Jamal Williams, if you have him, I think he's a pretty obvious plug and play with the Swift injury, but regardless, he's a start this week.
All right, and then my second running back is going to be Singletary for Buffalo. So not much of a ground game from Singletary, but you cannot ignore the 11 targets, the 9 receptions, 78 yards, and a touchdown through the air. That's monstrous for a running back. PPR, there's no ground and pound running back that's going to outproduce that. I mean, 11 targets is a lot through the air. They got a Baltimore team coming up, which I think this game is going to be a shootout. I mean, Baltimore's defense is just horrible. I mean, Josh Allen might throw for 900 yards in this game. I don't know, but
somebody.
But yeah, it's going to be a shootout. And Singletary is going to be out of the backfield again. I think his rushing performance is about this. I can't say the same because 13 yards is just horrible. But I think all his production comes through the air. So if he can stay in that range where if he's getting 10 targets and he's catching 8 of those balls, right there is a good fancy day. So I'm starting Singletary again. I think it's a great start. I mean, especially if you got 2 great running backs and you can put them in your flex. Like, yeah, that's awesome. So put Singletary in your lineup. That's my running back 2 this week.
I'm going to go to a team that I am a huge fan of, as you all know. Yeah. So we're going to go with Tony Pollard against my Washington Commanders. So Tony Pollard last week was 13 of 105 against a pretty decent Giants front 7. Much better than what Washington's going to bring to the table. Tony Pollard is getting more involved in that offense. On the goal line, it was a majority of the time Tony Pollard on the field. Now, Zeke did pull himself off the field on one of those red zone drives, so that was a little interesting to see. He must just needed a breather. Tony Pollard's getting that action, though. 13 carries in a game is way more than we expected as Tony Pollard owners. I think he's a great flex play this week. He's likely to find the end zone against a Washington team that just can't stop much. I'm going to say Tony Pollard has 90 total yards and a touchdown, making him an RB2 flex play. Get him in your lineups.
All right, so over to the Shivers for running backs. I got 2. I'm just going to categorize them together so we don't spend too much time on them here. But Dalvin Cook and Montgomery. So they're both kind of in the same boat. They both got injured last week. Dalvin Cook, I have him. I'm not starting him. I just think I also have Madison. So if you have Madison, that's a bonus because he's an RB1 right off the bat. So but they're not giving us much information about Cook. So even if Cook does play, I don't think he's going to have that role where he's the head back. I think Madison plays a lot in this game no matter what. So I think they're going to try to save Cook a little bit as far as his injuries going. And if he plays, I'm thinking 10 carries. I'm thinking Madison 10 carries. So I'm staying away from Cook this week. I'm actually keeping him on my bench. And the same thing goes for Montgomery. Montgomery, same situation. He got hurt. They're not giving us too much information on him either. And I think there was talk about leaning towards playing, but it's not clear yet. So same thing with Montgomery. If he's healthy, you're going to see a big dose of Herbert also. So I think them 2 running backs are kind of identical as far as their backups go, and their backups kind of crunching into their playing time. So them are my 2 sits this week.
So I'm going to go into quick details of a couple guys that I don't like this week. First one's, again, from my Washington Commanders, going to be Antonio Gibson. Gibson owners, it's time to start selling. If you don't have Brian Robinson on your bench, even if you do, now's the time to sell Antonio Gibson. He's got his most value. I don't think he's going to keep that value as the year goes and Brian Robinson becomes more integrated into the offense. Now, for this week, though, he's coming off a game where he had 12 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown saved him. Without that touchdown, he was a complete bust last week. Didn't see the passing game action, and a lot of that has to do with Carson Wentz being hit as soon as he got into his drop. You're going to see that again this week. You're going to see that front seven getting to Carson Wentz a lot quicker than he's going to want them there. I don't think Antonio Gibson's going to benefit from any of this. The offensive line's playing bad. I just see him having one of those games if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's going to be a complete bust, and that's not what you want from your RB2. So I'm going to say Antonio Gibson is a sit. I'm also going to give you my other sit that I think is the next running back you need to be selling high, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He has got a ton of volume in the first couple weeks. It's kind of dwindled a little bit as we've gotten closer to week 4. I don't like the fact that they are getting Isaiah Pacheco in more. They are getting more involved with McKinnon on third downs. Edwards-Helaire is not going to keep that volume that he had week 1. He's not going to keep getting those touches. I think Edwards-Helaire is a guy that eventually is just going to fizzle out, and he's going to be an 8 to 10 point guy a week. He's also going against the Bucs defense that just doesn't give up a lot of points to running backs. That is in a PPR format, so we're talking passing and rushing. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I'm going to go ahead and just say sit him as well.
All right, so that'll wrap up the running back. So we'll jump over to the wide receivers. So my number 1 wide receiver is going to be Olave, Chris Olave for the Saints. All right, it's time to get him in your lineup. I know people are kicking themselves in their heads for having him on your bench maybe last week. The week before definitely was on your benches. He's had 13 targets each of the last 2 weeks. That's a lot of targets. So you got a banged up Michael Thomas, you got a banged up Tre'Quan Smith. I think Olave is a man there. He was 9 for 147 last week. That's a huge game. He still didn't reach the end zone. I think this is the week he gets in the end zone and gets his first NFL touchdown. So Olave, 13 targets. Can't pass that up. Get him in your lineup.
I'm going to go to the matchup in Buffalo or with the Bills and the Ravens. I'm going to go with Gabe Davis as being a start this week. He's coming off an injury. Week 2, didn't play. Wasn't great week 3. So it's a guy you may not have the most confidence moving forward. Don't be worried this game. This Baltimore defense is atrocious through the air. They give up the most fantasy points, more than any other defense in the league when it comes to wide receivers. I think Gabe Davis, for that reason, Josh Allen, like I said earlier, could go for who knows how many yards he's going to have. It's going to be a shootout in that game. I think that Gabe Davis is going to benefit from that. I'm going to say for all purposes, he's going to go for about 114 in a touchdown. I think Gabe Davis is the guy you get in your lineup.
Agreed. So my second wide receiver is going to be Tyler Lockett. So last week I was on the Metcalf train. I was right for the most part. That was his best game of the year so far. He did get in the end zone, 60-some yards, like 5 or 6 receptions. But Lockett just keeps eating. So Lockett has had 11 targets over the last 2 games each. He's playing a Detroit team that gives up 32 points a game. I mean, that's a lot of points to be in someone's mouth. I think Lockett and Metcalf both do well this game. But Lockett with 11 targets, he had 9 receptions. I mean, if he keeps that up, just the receptions alone are good for your fantasy team. And he's got that big play ability, So if he pulls off one of them big plays on top of those 9 receptions, it's a huge week. So I think Lockett's in my lineup. He's also one that you drafted probably kind of late in the draft, and with the Geno Smith thing coming in, nobody expected Lockett or Metcalf to have a good year. That's kind of shown with Metcalf, but Lockett hasn't really lost much on it so far. So keep Lockett in there. Fire him up.
Speaking of fire him up, let's get to our last start of the week. I really like this matchup coming in. Both of my receivers are based off their matchup. It's going to be Brandon Ayuk. So we're talking a San Francisco 49ers team that's gone over a complete transformation from week 1 till now. They started out week 1 with Trey Lance, who we just didn't know what he was going to bring to the table. We didn't know how it was going to affect Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, the running backs. It's a trickle-down thing. That team has now gone from him. Jimmy G is back in the lineup. He's much better for what Brandon Ayuk does. He's more of a guy that's going to look for him more often than not. last week he had a stellar first drive and then kind of disappeared during that game. This game, though, they're playing a Rams defense that is pretty much at the bottom of the league in fantasy football points allowed to opposing receivers. That just equals out to a big game from someone. We already know Deebo Samuel's going to do it. Fire him up. Right now,
Fire him up. All right, over to the Shiver side. So I actually went over this guy last week, and that's Bateman for Baltimore. So Bateman's got the ability. He's obviously every week a boom or a bust because he's got that big play ability, and without that big play, he's not producing. So, but that big play can happen at any time. So he's very risky, and it's up to you if you want to risk him getting that 50-yard touchdown, a 60-yard touchdown. He needs that to produce well for you. So I don't like that starting for me. I think it's just too risky. I know you're going to get angry, 3 or 4 weeks out of the year when, he caught an 80-yard touchdown, that's 70-yard touchdown. But they're few and far between, and I'm not relying on that. So I'm keeping Bateman on my bench. Maybe good trade value out of him. So somebody might like him in your league. If you can get somebody more consistent, that's the route I'm going with him.
So I'm going to jump into another receiver for a team that he's kind of a boom bust guy, Alan Lazard. So for Alan Lazard, I don't necessarily like the matchup this week. I feel like with what Romeo Doubs did last week, I think Doubs is taking over as that alpha in that offense. I think Alan Lazard's role is going to diminish. He only had 4 catches last week, so for Alan Lazard owners, I know it's a little frustrating. I don't like playing the guessing game, same as Rashad Bateman. I don't want to guess if Alan Lazard is going to show up and score 2 touchdowns or if he's going to show up and have 2 catches. So for me, Alan Lazard this week is just going to be a no.
All right, I'm going to go to my last Shiver, and it's going to be Christian Kirk. So Kirk came out on fire. Week 1, week 2, did excellent. I think week 3 slowed down a little bit. Still had the touchdown though. So he's been producing very well this week. This week he runs into Darius Slay and the Philadelphia Eagles. So that Philly team is really, really good. They're good on both sides of the ball. Their defense is excellent. Their secondary is good. Their offense is good. So I'm not expecting Christian Kirk to have a big game. He still might give you that 12-point-ish type of deal, but that's basically what I'm expecting out of him. So, not saying he's a bust, but definitely more shivery than he's been in the past 3 weeks.
Okay, we're going to get to our last one on my side for the Shivers. And this one's going to be a big name that I'm not saying to bench. I'm just saying I don't expect big things this week, and that's Davante Adams. So Davante Adams is going to be going up against the Broncos. And a tough divisional matchup. This game just screams underperforming, lower scoring in. I don't think this game gets above the 20s for either team. I like Davante Adams, but if you look at his production this year, he had his game 1 where he had 29 points. In the next 2 games, he's averaged 10.7 in each of those contests. And where you drafted Davante Adams is in that late first, early second round, so you're expecting bigger production out of your guy. I just don't think he matches up well with these Broncos secondary. I think they're going to put the clamps on him early and often. I'm going to say Davante Adams doesn't top 5 catches and 82 yards. So just a down game for Davante Adams. If you got somebody better, you can use them, but keep them in your lineups. Just don't expect big things.
All right, so that'll do it for all your basic position players. We're going to move on to the tight ends. There's a couple of them to go over. We're going to go over Tyler Higbee and then David Njoku. So I'll let you fire them up.
Yeah, so we'll start off with Higbee's going to be a shiver this week for me. He is my tight end. I am fading as much as possible. This is just a tough matchup for him as well. The Niners do not give up points to tight ends. They have a great linebacking core. They're going to cover well in that secondary. I do not see Higbee getting a lot of traction in this game. I see Allen Robinson getting more than Higbee in this one. I don't like Higbee, so I'm saying find his replacement.
And that replacement might be
David Njoku.
Yeah, Njoku broke out last week, finally. So he signed that big contract, and a lot of people were high on him pre-draft, and they gave up on him very, very quickly. So fantasy football is weird. So after 2 weeks, you got guys that aren't performing. You can't give up on them. Come on, wait it out, figure it out, stash them. Don't give up on players like this because they gave him that money for a reason. He's a good tight end. He's a big target. He's a red zone target. Last week, he went off. So I think Njoku settles in and has a very good season. So I think he's definitely a top 10 tight end when it's all said and done. So what's your opinion on him?
I think my fear with Njoku moving forward is just the amount of boom and bust that he possesses. If you look at his first 2 games, he didn't even show up to those games. I think he had 1 catch in game 1, something like that. He was barely even targeted. So those are the kind of guys that scare you because they can put up 25 points for you and they can also put up 2 points for you. So I like Njoku this week. I think his matchup is perfect for what they're looking to do. I think the Browns are going to continue to be attacking downfield. I like Amari Cooper. I like all pass catchers in that game from the Browns side. So Njoku, I think, benefits from this game, this matchup, and he's going to give you a solid game this week. I'm going to say he gets his 2nd touchdown of the year. We call it his first. We'll call him his 2nd. So Njoku.
Yeah, and Brissett is really not playing that bad. So he's not put up the fantasy numbers that we want for your fantasy quarterback, but he's not playing bad. He's managing the game good. He's actually doing well for Cleveland. And when Deshaun Watson comes back, I don't know how they're going to handle that, but I like Brissett. I like Njoku. I think he likes Njoku. I think we're good there. So I guess that does it for the tight end position. There's a couple of defenses this week that I think just might go crazy. One of them is Green Bay, and the other one is
Who's your other one?
Pittsburgh.
I was thinking. I wasn't thinking about Pittsburgh. Yeah, I like Pittsburgh. Oh, Zach Wilson's going. That's gonna be fun. But just a side note on that game. If you are any owners of that stock in that offense, be so scared this week. You can start your guys, but man, you got Zach Wilson going back. Who knows what he brings? I think 2 defenses that I was thinking that could be plays that you could pick up from the waiver wire would be the Giants against the Bears and the Dallas Cowboys against the Washington Commanders. The Giants, I actually picked them up this morning, and I am starting them, so I really like their matchup. The Bears' offense it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's really, really, really bad.
It's
I
bad.
don't know if I've seen an offense that bad, but yeah, I mean Green Bay's got New England this week, and they're got the Mac Jones injury in New England, so I think Brian Hoyer is coming into play. I think and Green Bay's defense is already good. It's a very good defense, and I mean you saw the Tampa Bay game, they allowed 12 points. But yeah, their defense is good. I think their defense racks it up this week, and same thing with Pittsburgh. They got Zach Wilson coming in town, and I know last year I think I streamed every defense that played the Jets against Zach Wilson when he was in the game. So yeah, so I like Pittsburgh's defense, Green Bay's defense. I think them are my top 2 defenses this week. Yeah, I think that about covers it.
I think that's everything. So our other video we're going to get into, we're going to be talking about point spreads, game trends we look for, and just predicting for fun, of course, what we think is going to happen. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please make sure to do that down below. You got anything else?
No, I think that's it.
I think that's it.
We'll see you guys next time.
Absolutely. Go Commanders.
Go Colts.